There's a quiet sorrow at the heart of Tolkien's world, and it is fading of the elves. When we first enter Middle-earth, especially through the Shire, we feel something preserved. Green hills, old songs, slow time. But beyond the hedgerows, something older is already residing. Rivendell is a memory, Lothlorien is a memory. Even as we see them, they are already gone. When I was a kid, I used to ask my grandfather Samwise Gamgee a question about this matter, and he would answer, the question is not simply why did the elves leave, the deeper question is why did they have to? To understand that, we have to begin with immortality. In most cultures, immortality is a gift, eternal youth, endless time, wisdom that accumulates like treasure. But Tolkien does something subtler and stranger. For the elves, immortality is not endless vitality, it is endless memory. They do not age as men do, they do not escape the world through death, they are bound to it, bound to its soil, bound to its history, and bound to its wounds. Imagine remembering everything, every friendship, every betrayal, every tree that once stood where now there is ash. The elves cannot step outside of history, they endure it. Mortality for men is called the gift of Ilúvatar. That always sounds ironic at first, death as a gift, but from the elvish perspective, death is a release. It's freedom from the circles of the world. The elves remain, and because they remain, they accumulate loss. This is where Tolkien's idea of the long defeat enters. Galadriel speaks of it quietly. It is the recognition that in Middle-earth, even victories are temporary. The first Dark Lord Morgoth is defeated, but his corruption remains in the substance of the world. Sauron falls, but the power of the Three Rings fade with him. Evil can be resisted, but not erased. The elves fight not for ultimate triumph, but for preservation. They preserve beauty, they preserve memory, they preserve light. Lothlorien is not a kingdom of expansion. It is a sanctuary against time, but preservation has a cost. To preserve is to resist change, and Middle-earth is changing. The elves are aligned with a world that is passing. Their power is tied to a kind of primordial beauty. The light of the two trees, the unfallen memory of Valinor. That light grows dim in Middle-earth. Every age moves further from the beginning. And here we encounter something profound. In Tolkien's Middle-earth, beauty is not stable. It is not meant to last forever. The Shire itself survives the War of the Ring, but it is scarred. The party tree is cut down. Even after it is restored, Frodo cannot remain. Healing does not mean reversal. This impermanence is not a flaw in the story. It is the point. Beauty in Middle-earth is temporary because Middle-earth itself is not the final reality. It is a stage in a larger story. The elves belong to an earlier chapter. They are beings of memory and art and preservation, but history does not stand still for preservation. Men, on the other hand, are restless. They build, they destroy. They forget, they innovate. They die. It is easy to see men as lesser when compared to elves. They are more corruptible, more easily swayed. Their kingdoms fall quickly. Númenor rises and then drowns. But there is something else at work. Men are not tied to the world in the same way. They are not anchored to its past. Their mortality makes them unpredictable. Their fate lies beyond the world, even to the Valar. In mythic terms, this is radical. Many European traditions treat immortality as the highest state. The gods are deathless, the heroes seek eternal fame, but Tolkien flips that axis. The elves, who resemble the deathless gods of the old myth, slowly withdraw. The future belongs not to the shining immortals, but to fragile, mortal humanity. When I compare Tolkien to myths beyond Europe, I'm not saying Tolkien's borrowed from Buddhism or Hinduism. I'm pointing at a shared human idea that pops up in different cultures. The idea that being alive for a very long time is not the same thing as being free. In some Buddhist traditions, there are heavenly realms and powerful beings who live for ages, but they're still inside the system. They're still stuck in samsara, the cycle of existence, change, loss, and rebirth. So even heaven can be a kind of golden prison. And in some Hindu cosmologies, even gods exist exist inside enormous cycles of creation and destruction. Worlds rise, worlds end, and everything repeats. So immortality inside the world can still mean you are trapped inside the world's wheel. That helps us feel what Tolkien does with the elves. The elves don't die like men. That sounds like a superpower, but it has a hidden cost. They can't truly exit this story. They remain tied to the Middle-earth for as long as it exists. They carry every sorrow, every fading, every loss forever. Their immortality is a kind of binding. Men are the opposite though. Men must live. They can't cling to the world forever, even if they want to. And because they have an ending, they have something the elves don't: release, and a future that isn't chained to Middle-earth. So here's a sharp, almost shocking idea Tolkien sneaks in. The being who look closest to angels, beautiful, wise, nearly unbroken, are not the heirs of history. The heirs are the messy ones, the mortal ones, the ones who fail, learn, rebuild, and then die. That's the theological audacity in Tolkien's thoughts. Perfection doesn't inherit the world, mortality does. Not because men are better, but because the world is meant to move on, and men are built for just that: changes. An immortal civilization tends toward stasis. An immortal memory cannot let go, but mortality forces urgency. It forces risk. It forces invention. A mortal race cannot preserve a golden age forever. It must build something new or perish. The fourth age is not brighter than the first. It is not more magical. It is thinner, less luminous. The world becomes more ordinary, and yet this thinning is necessary. If Middle-earth remained a place of visible magic and immortal guardians, men would never truly inherit it. They would always live in the shadow of something older and wiser. The fading of the elves is what creates space. Space for human history, space for human error, space for human responsibility. There is melancholy in that transition. Tolkien does not celebrate it with fireworks. The ships leave quietly. The grey heavens are grey for a reason. But the fading is not annihilation. It is a change of guardianship. The elves represent memory, men represent story. Memory preserves what was, story moves toward what will be. When Frodo sails west, he steps partly into the elvish mode, a longing for healing beyond the world. And when Samwise returns to the Shire, he embodies the human mode. He plants trees, he has children, he continues. The elves could not continue in that way. Their grief would accumulate faster than renewal. Over millennia, even joy becomes heavy. Immortality without transcendence becomes erosion. So they fade, not because they failed, not because they were weak, but because their role in the drama was complete. Tolkien's world is not about the triumph of the flawless. It is about stewardship across ages. Each race carries the flame for a time, then passes it. This is why the story feels older than its own pages. It mirrors something true about our own myths. The age of gods gives way to the age of heroes. The age of heroes gives way to the age of men. The sacred resides into symbols. The miraculous becomes memory, and yet something persists. The elves do not vanish into nothing. They cross the sea. They moved beyond the circles of the world. Their beauty becomes part of a deeper, unseen continuity. Middle-earth grows more human, more ambiguous, more fragile. And perhaps that fragility is the point. The world without guaranteed guardians demands courage. A world without visible immortals demands faith. A world without permanent beauty demands a creation. The elves had to fade so that men could step forward, not as spectators of myth, but as authors of history. And in that quiet departure, Tolkien leaves us with a thought that feels both ancient and modern. The most luminous things are not always meant to stay. They are meant to awaken something in us, and then let us carry the light ourselves. From here, the door opens wide, not just to the fading of elves, but to the recurring human intuition that golden ages reside, that gods withdraw, that immortals depart, and that what remains is our strange, brief, dangerous inheritance. The world after magic is not lesser, it is ours. Right then, it's getting late, lads. The Shire's gone quiet, and I can hear my conscience telling me to stop monologuing at the fireplace. If you enjoyed this little adventure, please give it a like before you vanish into the night like a suspiciously well-dressed elf, and do subscribe because I've got more Tolkien insights brewing, Hobbit style, thoughtful, story-shaped, and occasionally mildly heretical. Now off you go, don't feed the trolls, don't trust any ring you find in the river, and remember, even the smallest click can change the fate of the algorithm.